Yes, guys, what's going on? Australia no longer feels the same anymore, aside from the cost of living, which a lot of people have been complaining about recently. This one's from Michael Joseph. Fix this issue, and even with the cost of living, things would be a lot better, at least in my opinion. So let's just jump forward a little bit, see what he's got to say.
Is a lack of community, right?
Oh,
That sucks. I mean, I think that's part of it, which I like to complain about a lot. But I think the bigger thing that actually sucks is a lack of community, right? No one gives a shit about anybody anymore. Nobody wants to talk to anybody anymore. Nobody wants to make effort for anybody anymore. Friendships and relationships are expendable, replaceable. No one cares to work towards them. No one cares about each other. It's just weird, right? Society is just weird right now. And ever since the whole, little sniffles that we had back in 2019 or whatever, it hasn't been the same, right?
yeah, I agree. I actually think this has been going on for a little while, but this is all part of the cultural war that's been happening online, and I mean, it's mostly happening online over the last few years since COVID, since the pandemic. I mean, people were locked in their rooms for like a year. In some places, I mean, I can only talk about Australia because I lived in Australia during that time. You couldn't even go out for a walk, right? There was a curfew for just for going outside. People were getting depressed. I was getting depressed. I mean, just yeah, being locked in your room all day long, you can't even do anything. You can go for a walk for 20 minutes or something, 15 minutes, I think it was. If you're out for longer, or if they see you multiple times, they being the police, you'd get arrested. You'd have to be taken back to your place. Maybe even you'd be arrested and taken to a cell. It's just just crazy. But I think the community thing is it's been happening for a little while. Like manners and things like that, just non-existent in Western countries.
And honestly, it honestly just feels kind of pointless because of that. You can always sit around and blame the cost of living. You can say that the cost of living is too high and that's why everything sucks. But I mean, really, I think it comes down to a lack of community. I think that the lack of community is the whole reason that this country really sucks because I can deal with the cost of living. But what I find that's harder to deal with is like having like no community around, no people that really give a shit. I'm not specifically just talking about people who give a shit about me. I mean, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in general, right? No one cares about each other, and I think that that's the main reason why this country really sucks. It's that you don't get a social experience anymore. You know, if you let's say you go out to a bar or a club, no one wants to talk to anyone. And the people that are just so weird, and that's why I don't go out to bars and clubs anymore because they're just really just boring. And yeah, every time I go there, I find myself wondering why am I here.
It's kind of true. It also kind of depends on the person, right? So, I mean, if I go to a bar or a club and I just stand around, no one's going to really typically talk to me unless I got a nice pair of boobs. You know what I mean? Single girls going out to the club, they're going to be spoken to by all kinds of people, girls, guys. A man typically isn't going to get spoken to. You have to approach people, man. You got to go talk to people. But it has changed a lot over the last 10, 15 years or so. I will agree. When I first started going out, there was a lot more social conversation. But that was before Instagram. It was around the time Facebook was becoming popular. But I think these days, who is 18, 19 now? The Gen Z, right? So their social skills are at an all-time low. I mean, you go to a bar or a club now, they're just in their friendship groups, and typically people are on their phones and things like that. It's a real strange vibe.
Why am I surrounded by these degenerates? Um, it kind of always makes me rethink my life.
This is also a good thing. So if you're thinking the same as this guy, it's probably just a good thing to be thinking that way. Like You don't need to be going out to bars and clubs. If you haven't achieved anything in your life right now, just go and achieve something. You're supposed to be going to bars and clubs, yeah, to kind of meet people, maybe to find a partner. It's probably not the best place to find a partner, but that's what we do. We go to bars and clubs for social interaction to find partners. But you don't really need to be going out and celebrating if you aren't achieving anything in the week, you know. So you can think of it in that regard, and yeah,
I I go there and I just remind myself that I don't want to be like these people, if that makes sense. So that's the only thing that I sort of get out of that. And then I just end up not going for months and months at a time. The only reason I ever go out to a bar or a club is that, somebody has to sort of drag me out, right? Um, but it's just it's so shit, right? This country, it's just it feels not the same. It doesn't feel the same as it did 5, 6 years ago.
I wonder if this guy travels. I wonder if he experiences the same problem when he goes somewhere else. Typically, when people travel when they're on a holiday, they're in a different vibe. They're a different kind of personality. They have different energy. When you're just doing the same things around your hometown. This is why I always recommend you guys. You got to go live somewhere else. Try new places. Don't just go for a holiday. Actually, go live somewhere.
It doesn't. And to me, it hasn't really felt the same since, like, I don't know, 2013, probably 2012. I don't know. It's just society. I think ever since we bought out smartphones is when things sort of, went downhill. Um, I honestly think that half the reason for people's social anxiety is due to these phones.
100%. Definitely agree with that.
I went for almost a year without my phone one time deliberately. I broke the phone and then I was like, I don't want to replace it yet. I'm just going to go without a phone. And I did for like an entire year. And my social skills skyrocketed, man. Like my confidence, my ability to talk to people. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel.
Introducing Create Studio, the world's only AI-powered 3D character video creator.
I don't know how to explain it. I just didn't have this feeling that I needed to hide, in a sense. I guess that maybe could have been like a bit of social anxiety that just developed over the years. But I found that once I got rid of that phone, that made the world a difference, right? And so I honestly think that the phones are probably the biggest cause for all of this. Even when it comes to friendships and relationships, the phones and the ability to just replace people just like that. It's very easy to do because you've got all these apps at your fingertips with thousands of people that you can replace the people that you've got with. I mean,
Problem is, it's not real human connection, though, is it? I think people are starting to wake up about this. The phone is definitely the source of people's anxiety, and although it brings a lot of good to your life, it also creates a lot of problems. And if people don't recognize that, if they don't use their phone in moderation, it can really affect your mental health.
I mean, that's kind of how it is, isn't it now? I mean, people are just replaceable. And so because people,
I don't really agree with people are replaceable. I think it's just more about the fact that as you get older, this guy seems to, he's not a young man. He's not 18 anymore. You know what I'm saying? As you get older, you just start to realize that there's more out there, right? And you don't need friends and family members or negative people or even people that you work with bringing you down. And so as you get older, you start to really value certain types of relationships, and you're going to get rid of other types of relationships. So maybe this guy's experiencing some of that in his personal life.
people feel that way about everyone else, they don't give a shit about building relationships anymore because they think, well, you know what? Well, if you screw up, then I'll just find someone else or I'll just replace you. It's just kind of how it is now.
Common problem in dating as well, and that's why a lot of people are unhappy. That particular mindset is the reason why a lot of people are unhappy.
And so there is the lack of community, right? Um, you go out, everyone's depressed, everyone doesn't want to talk to anyone, and it's just miserable, man. Or you go out and you see all these like homeless people on the street, and that's a result of like a failed society, right? Um, it's just sucks, man. And I hate the city for the most part. I hate going to the city. The city.
Yeah, don't get me started on a city. I guess this goes from Sydney or Melbourne. We'll find out in a second. But if you go in the city in Perth, it's just full of homeless people or people shouting at you. Someone's on drugs running around. This is in the daytime as well. Most of the businesses are shut because the rent is so high. So, companies can't afford to actually be there. So no one even goes to the city. If you go there, you've got a park. It all sounds like basic stuff, right? But that is unfortunately the problems with that particular city. And that is replicated across the other cities in Australia, no doubt.
City just stinks like piss. It's just disgusting. I don't really enjoy going to the city. Like, I don't mind riding the skateboard around the city, but I don't actually like the city. I find the city is just so, I don't know, the vibes in the city are completely off. Um, it just doesn't feel enjoyable being there anymore. They had a chance to buy the house because, all the in existence, man, right? You know, you say hello to somebody and they look at you like you're weird, or they'll look at you like, why are you happy? Like, dude, like everyone's so I think it's a mixture of anger as well. Runs nicely, and then I started diagnosing it, chuck some water in the radiator.
Yeah, look, I mean, I got to admit there is something off since all this crazy nonsense has happened in the world. But at the end of the day, it's going to be your own personal world paradigm and the way that you present yourself to the world. You create your reality. If you're going out with a positive attitude and you have good energy about you and you speak to people, they're going to typically respond positively. If they're responding negatively, sometimes that's not to do with them, it's to do with you. You have to adjust the way that you are. Maybe it's something to do with your energy, or just your body language, or your behavior. Maybe sometimes it's even just the way you look and the way you dress. That's just how people are. So don't always take, you know, don't just like look at your own social interaction and think like the whole world's a mess. If we look at some of these comments, some people do agree. Yeah, this is noticeable. There's a lack of community, especially for people who live alone. I think people who live alone probably just spend a lot of time on their phone. So when they're going out, they're very anxious and they're probably not doing their job of actually speaking to people. It's a massive problem these days. Gen Z, like I said earlier, they don't have any social skills. You actually have to go out and speak to people, guys. If you go and live in a different country, different language, you're almost given, like you kind of feel like it's not important for you, or like you almost give yourself a bit of a break because it's like you don't understand the language anyway, so you give yourself an excuse, but you still have to go and speak to people, right? If you're just living in your normal home country and you can understand the language, like you actually have to go and walk up to people and speak to them. If you're going to bars and clubs, if you don't like doing that, go join some kind of social community or group. Everyone's starting to do things, or everyone has been doing too much stuff online now, and the problem with doing that is that most of the people you're probably speaking to online is a bot. The dark internet theory is real, guys. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg said that he's going to put bots into Instagram, so you can be speaking to AI, speaking to bots. Just go on Threads. Most of the people on there are bots. Like, this is actually something that was announced, I think, last year. People don't even realize that they're having arguments with bots on the internet. The real Aussie soul has left us. Yeah, I do think that the soul of Australia is probably gone. But I mean, did Australia really have a soul before? Australia doesn't really have much of a culture. It's a very multicultural society, but little culture actually exists. Last now in a coffin, ruined by COVID and lockdown. Yeah, I think this might have happened in a lot of countries. However, the whole world experienced COVID and lockdowns. I was in Hanoi, Vietnam recently. Streets were full of people sitting around having beers together, old men drinking coffee, people eating together. It was so different to Sydney. Yeah, I mean, I'm in Vietnam now. I'm in Da Nang, and you go out, people are eating food, having fun, drinking coffees, drinking beers. Most people speak to each other quite casually. However, if you do go to the restaurants, you go to the bars and the clubs, they don't usually interact with people outside of their friendship group. So it's very different to the West. I think everyone has experienced the same problem, and typically it's just going to be based on you personally. If you're an anxious person, stop using your phone so much. I've made 6 trips to Australia since 2013. Recent trip, Brisbane and Gold Coast. Number of Australians told me that after they pay their rent, they don't have money for food. Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but there is definitely a cost of living crisis in Australia, which is why a lot of Australians are moving elsewhere. Australia is like a giant corporate job. I'm just here to make my bag, then getting out. People don't know how to live here. Yeah, so this is the thing. Australia is basically a massive country that's controlled by big corporations. There's very little incentive for new entrepreneurs to go and build their own businesses. If you go to a place like Vietnam, I can only say it as an example because I'm here now. There's a lot of small businesses out there. People have a business from their home. So, there's shops and all kinds of stuff around. you don't have that ecosystem in a place like Australia because all the big companies control everything. It's too expensive to have your own business because you got to pay rent, you got to pay staff. You know, the cost of labor is so high. It's almost impossible. So as a new entrepreneur, unless you have an online business, it's extremely difficult to start something new. I see coffee shops start and close down very quickly within a matter of 3 to 6 months. Happens all the time. And so most of the Australians, they work for one of these big corporations, big mining company, big IT company, healthcare company, etc. And those industries are dominated by a small amount of companies. And yeah, it's just like one corporate job. I refer to it sometimes as just paid slavery. I know that might be a little bit extreme, but that's the way I see it sometimes. Everyone's just more or less a corporate slave to these big, corporations. I knew Australia was finished when I went to get a takeaway with a friend. The lady at counter asked, "Can I have a name for the order?" My mate said Steve, and later said, "How do you spell that?" Yeah, I mean, people don't know how to spell in Australia. That's been a problem for like the last 10, 15 years. I'm convinced it's illegal to smile in Melbourne. Yeah, when I went to Melbourne, I actually had a good time, but this was a while ago. I actually really enjoyed the vibe and the energy in Melbourne, but I think it's become a bit of a left-wing, radicalized hub or community. I know you're saying there's no community, but Melbourne's a bit of a left-wing community. I'm the only Aussie in my building, and all my neighbours are Chinese or East Asian and Indian. They're not friendly, and I've given up trying to say hello and be polite. Yeah, this is the problem. Nothing against these particular people, but most of the immigrants coming into Australia, they don't integrate. They just simply don't. They come usually for university, so I'd imagine these could be students. I could be wrong. Come for university, they get their degree, they don't integrate, they speak to each other, they have their own friends from their own countries, and then they get out. Sometimes they stay and they just continue not integrating. They're not friendly or good enough trying to say hello and be polite. God knows I've tried. Our major cities are unrecognizable. A lot of Aussies are leaving, mostly for this reason. I left Australia 2001. Australia was a very different place in the 70s, 80s, and 90s to what it is now. I recently spoke to my friend's girlfriend, and she said Australians keep to themselves. I don't think that was the case in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Australian society has changed. Yeah, I mean, if you meet Australians overseas, they're usually pretty friendly and happy. But isn't everyone when they're on holiday or if they're living in a different country from their own? That's why I always recommend guys try and live somewhere else. Asia, in my opinion, is the place, right? Chinese people that I've met across Asia are very nice. East Asians that I've met, very nice. Indians I've met in East Asia are very nice. In Asia, Southeast Asia is mostly where I spent my time. For some reason, when these cultures come to the Western countries, they just don't integrate. I don't know why. Usually when Western people go to Asian countries, they do integrate. And that's the cool thing. The only thing is that most people don't take up the language of the place that they're integrating with. That is a problem, but it's also a Western mindset. Everyone just speaks English. Aussies, Canadians, British, Americans, it's just easier speaking English, right? Everyone speaks English. So yeah, let me know in the comments below, guys, if you're from Australia. Do you agree? Disagree? Do you think maybe this guy's just, maybe it's just his energy in this flow? I mean, does he seem like someone that you might want to speak to in a restaurant or a bar or a club or outside on the street? I don't know. It could just be him. Or maybe you guys agree. Maybe you're experiencing the same thing. Maybe you agree with some of the comments here. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.